So I thought to share with you a little bit from an article that was in the New York Times this week that I found interesting. And it's called, Is Your God Dead? And it's written by a man who says that he's Christian, you know? And so I'm not going to read everything. I'm just going to skip certain things, but I'll put it out for you to read, if you'd like to read the whole thing. Okay? So, is your God dead? I don't mean the God of the philosophers or the scholars, but the God of Abraham, God of Isaac, and God of Jacob. So he's talking clearly from, he brings in Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, the three Abrahamic religions. So is your God dead? Have you buried your God in the majestic ornamental tombs of your churches, synagogues, and mosques? Perhaps prosperity theology, boisterous, formalistic, and mechanical prayer rituals, and skillful oratory have hastened the need for a eulogy. So he's talking from a theistic perspective, but what he's talking about pertains to Buddhism as well. Okay? So, the same thing. Maybe I should just add temples in here, uh, but formalistic and mechanical prayer rituals and skillful oratory, so things, lack of sincerity. Perhaps by remaining in your holy places, quote, quote, you have sacrificed looking in the face of your neighbor on the street. You know the one who smells bad because she hasn't bathed in days, the one who carries her house on her body, the one who begs. Surely you have seen that unholy face. I've seen you suddenly look away, making sure not to make eye contact with the unclean. Perhaps you're preoccupied with texting, consumed by work or a family matter. Then again, perhaps it's prayer time and you need to face east, or perhaps you're too focused on Holy Communion as you make your way to church. Your refusal to stop, to linger, to look into her eyes has already done its damage. Your body has already left a mark in its absence, in its fleeing the scene. Yeah, so we talk a lot about equanimity, love, compassion, and joy, and then we walk right past the people who are worthy of that. And of course, he's talking from the perspective of homeless people in this paragraph, but it pertains to other people too, the people we don't like, the people who have different political ideas. Yeah, the people who make fun of us, how we so easily tune out other people and walk straight past them. Then he says, my hands are also dirty. I'm guilty of missing the opportunity to recognize something of the divine in the face of the other on the street. So we wouldn't put it as the face of the divine. We would say somebody who has Buddha nature. Yeah, I'm just translating here. Yeah. I'm pretty sure I looked away when I caught a glimpse of a homeless man approaching the other day. How different is this from those who walked by the beaten and abandoned man in the parable of the Good Samaritan? I failed to see the homeless man as a neighbor. When we turn away like this, we behave as if our bodies had boundaries, as if our skin truly separated us from the other. But what if, as I would argue, our bodies don't have strict edges? What if we could develop a new way of seeing the body that reveals that we are always already touching, that inextricably linked, that we are inextricably linked to a larger institutional and social body that binds us all. So to translate into Buddhist language, if we could see that we are not an inherently existent separate identity, and let go of our selfishness, our self-centered concern, and instead see everybody as just like us, wanting happiness, not wanting suffering. Yeah. What would things, perhaps we need to develop that new way of looking at people, not just mouthing it as we generate motivations before each puja, as we say the monastic prayer in the morning, as we recite our offering service verse, you know. But what about if we really paid attention to what we were saying and tried to crack open our hearts a little bit to let others in? In meditating on these questions, I have found that the prophetic voice of Abraham Joshua Herschel, who's a 20th century Polish-born Jewish-American rabbi and activist, can help us towards an answer. Herschel, who studied in Germany with Martin Buber and later became a close friend of Martin Luther King Jr., warned frequently of the dangers of theological and religious shallowness, of our tendency to worry more about the purity of dogma than the integrity of love. Yeah? So we're more concerned with, our own studies and getting the correct, list of this and that with the correct definitions and the correct whatever, as valuable as it is and as important as it is, because we need to do that. But we do that and abandon the integrity of love. In other words, we're not putting into practice what we're studying. We know the definitions of love and compassion. We know the three kinds of compassion according to Chandrakirti. But when it comes to the person next to us who's, in a bad mood that day, our compassion is gone with the wind. Herschel cautions against an outward, I'm going like this because he quotes Herschel a lot. Herschel cautions against an outward compliance with ritual laws, strict observance mingled with dishonesty, the pedantic performance of rituals as a form of opportunism. Yeah? The outward compliance with ritual laws, strict observances mingled with dishonesty. So we want to keep, every last little rule, every last little guideline, be it in the Vinaya or in our Abbey things, we're much more focused on enforcing rules than we are about training our mind and caring about the people around us. So, of course, rules are designed to help us live peacefully. They're designed to help us train our mind and establish a safe environment. But when we become so occupied with the rules that we forget about the training, both in ourselves and in other people, then we've really lost the purpose of things. Yeah. And strict observance mingled with dishonesty. When we talk about being renunciants, and yet we keep more stuff than we really need. We don't, this is one of the reasons why we change rooms each year. It's supposed to be a time when you also clean out your room. What about our desks? How much litter do we have around our desks? And how much do we tend to want to buy this equipment and that equipment on the internet because we see, oh, it would be nice to have this, it would be nice to have that. We could use this new kind of pot or pan in the kitchen and a new kind of whatever. And we get so enamored with new things and getting exactly the right stuff that we forget that we're renunciates. And so again, this is why we have as a rule in the Abbey, if you receive a gift or something, or if you take something from the closet, that you give up something, and that we don't become like Imelda Marcos with lots of shoes for 2 feet. Okay? And the pedantic performance of rituals as a form of opportunism. There's a lot to unpack in that. But, just doing rituals as a way to have people give donations. Yeah, this is quite prominent, especially in Asia, people give donations, you do rituals. While you're doing the ritual, your mind is straying, or it may be rituals that you don't even feel do any good, but still other people like them, so you do them anyway, and because they bring finances into the temple. And there are so many who worship in churches, synagogues, and mosques and temples, who understand that religious truth must be lived, who make a point of looking into the eyes of the woman on the street and show her mercy. But too many of us refuse to look and to stop. Okay, and then there's another quote from a religious scholar Elizabeth Vasco. Okay, and it is this social and existential relationality that ties you to and implicates you in the life of that destitute woman. Herschel writes, "How dare we come before God with our prayers when we commit atrocities against the one image we have of the divine human beings?" Translated into Buddhist language, yeah. So it's the fact that we're all sentient beings. We all breathe the same air. We all have the same physical needs. We all have the same emotional, mental needs that ties us to the lives of the destitute woman, to the people who are trafficked, to the impoverished, not just to people who it's easy to feel sorry for, yeah, but also to the young men who get conscripted into Boko Haram and wind up being soldiers that are vicious and commit atrocities because they were kidnapped and forced into that life. Do we have any compassion for those young men? Yeah. Do we have compassion for some of the people in the alt-right groups, or the people who want every household to have one or more guns? Yeah. So I think, Buddhism is really calling for us to open our hearts and really have compassion for people that we disagree with. In other words, having love and compassion for somebody does not depend on liking them. It does not depend on having the same values as them. It does not depend on all the things that it makes it easy for us to feel close to somebody on. But real love and compassion depend on just our commonality of wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And that goes to all sentient beings. Yeah, even the raccoon. Yeah. Okay. Then he says here, as a young boy, the idea of exempting no one from redemption tested my mother, who was a Baptist. One night I asked her if I could pray for the devil. Strange, I admit. My mother eventually said yes. So there I was on my knees. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray the Lord my soul to keep. If I should die before I wake, I pray the Lord my soul to take. God bless my mother, my sister, and my friends, and God bless the devil. That's something, isn't it? You know? And I think that is the same attitude that we should have when we make dedication prayers. Not just for the people we like, not just for the people we agree with, but for the people who live in so much incredible ignorance and confusion that their values are corrupt, or even though they may have good values, they don't live by them and they live completely contrary to their own values, you know. But to really open our compassion and our feeling of connection to all those people too, and not just get stuck in feeling, well, we have the right theology and we keep good ethical conduct and we're cultivating love and compassion, not like those people. Okay. So I'll stop here for today because we're in precepts and maybe continue a bit tomorrow with it. Yeah. But I think this idea of praying for the benefit of the devil is quite important, you know? And that's why when we, do our chanting and everything, I have Trump and the whole Congress and the whole cabinet all around me, including Putin and Assad and, everybody else. We've got to include all these people in our practice.